please email us at will@blackmenunited.org. Again, folks, we really want to jump into the show and talk about emotional emancipation circles. What are they, and what type of impact do they have on the black community? We have three guests tonight. First, ladies first, Miss Enola G. Aird. She is an activist, mother, former corporate lawyer, and has worked for the Children Defense Fund. And we'll let her get into more details about her bio when she comes on the show. We also have none other, Miss Shelley Henderson, and I'll let her introduce herself. How you doing, Shelley? I'm doing good. I'm doing good. And we also have Mr. Larry Duncan of Jericho Counseling. How you doing, Mr. Duncan? You well? Great, great, great. Again, we should have Miss Enola calling in a few minutes. Should be calling in about 7:05. Again, if you have a question or a comment, you can email us at will@blackmenunited.org. Or you can text us at 402 965 1003. Again, you're tuned in to 1690 AM The One, the affiliate of 95.7 The Boss, the number one station in Nebraska. Yes, sir. If you have not went in and tuned in to 95.7, you're missing a great channel, great music, and it's a mix of music from R&B to gospel to rap, but it really has taken a hold on the city of Omaha. So if you get the opportunity to go out and support 95.7 The Boss. Okay, we're going to bring in our guest tonight, Miss Shelley Henderson, and of course Mr. Larry Duncan. And as soon as Miss Enola calls in, we will bring her in immediately. But before that, let's start the show and talk about first of all, bring Shelley Henderson into the show and give us a little big backdrop of who Shelley Henderson is and what you do.
So thank you, Willie. I'm Shelley Henderson. I wear a number of hats in our community in Northeast Omaha, but I work full-time for a national nonprofit called First. I have had an opportunity over the last decades really to work with schools, nonprofit organizations, higher ed
Oh
institutions,
yeah, no, yeah.
etc. I do still teach time to time at UNO and Nebraska Methodist College, but all of my work focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And Mr. Duncan, could you please come in and give a brief intro of what you do and
Well, I'm Larry Duncan, and I am a longtime therapist. I would say overall, I'm a behavioral health services professional
mhm,
here in Omaha. So I've worked in administration, I've worked in direct care, I've worked in-home therapy. So my experience in the field has been in behavioral health and dealing primarily in the community in terms of one-on-one counseling and group counseling, substance abuse counseling, and directing and leading private practice
mhm,
for therapy.
great, great. Shelley, I would like for you to really set the stage, if you will, for tonight's show in regards to emotional emancipation circles.
Thank you. I'll be happy to do that. One of the things that brought us to where we are right now is when I happened upon the Community Healing Network. And I first was introduced to it through their Facebook account. I noticed that they were posting a lot of things that really resonated with me, and so I joined their Facebook account back probably 2 years ago. Each fall, they have a day where we all wear sky blue in solidarity about how we envision Black people and their ability to be emotionally free, and their ability to thrive, and their ability to soar. And so I had just really remotely been engaged in the work and just reached out from time to time. When I started learning more about their Vision 2020 campaign and their emotion, emotional emancipation circles, I really started thinking that this would be something that would benefit Omaha. So I reached out to Dr. Enola Aird, and you will probably feel the same way that I feel about her. She's just wise, and a very sweet and knowledgeable woman. But she speaks also from a place of authority and power about Black people and issues concerning them. So I had been awfully impressed with her, and just started and maintained a relationship with her that I really appreciate. We had started too here in Omaha conversations about having a Black folks only kind of a proposition. They started off being meetings and are starting to shape form into a movement. One of the things that we were trying to do is answer the question of why have a Black only kind of a proposition. And one of the things that I knew I could do was turn to the Community Healing Network and how they laid out their initiative, because it is one where um, the work doesn't necessarily always happen in mixed company. And so I thought that allowing the organizers of the Black Folks Only movement to understand how the Community Healing Network framed their work was an important one. And so I shared that information with the group. And kind of the rest is history. What was impressive to me became impressive to them, and we took off from there.
Oh, great. Again, we're waiting for Miss Enola to call in to the show to really expound on what Shelley talked about with regards to the Black Folks Only meeting, how we got to this point. But we want to let Enola talk about the whole mission behind the emotional emancipation circle. We don't want to give out false information or anything like that. So it would be beneficial to us and the audience to hear from her how this all came about and what is the purpose or the mission behind emotional emancipation circles. So,
what
so
I can do is talk more really about what's happened as of late in an effort to at least bring people into the awareness of what we were hoping to do. We got together and a few of us organized an opportunity this past Saturday evening. We appreciate Willie and what he does with the Dine Dinner Digest each month, and we use that opportunity as a time where we could start introducing people to the notion of emotional emancipation. I believe the turnout was good. I think that the presentation went forth well. I think that the feedback was wonderful, and people really kind of are starting to understand what it is that we want to do. Unfortunately, we had a situation where what we were trying to do did not have the proper light cast upon it by the media. And so there was a news article and a video that really was trying to share what we accomplished at the meeting and what we hope to accomplish at the meeting. And that was called Emotional Emancipation Circles Could Help African American Self-Esteem Issues. And that title in it of itself and the article accompanying it could really not have been further from the truth in terms of what we are actually doing. In this effort, we're not necessarily talking about putting broken Black people back together again and helping out their poor little self-esteem. That's not what we're trying to do. And so, for me, it was just another example of the major mass media taking something that was intended another way for Black people, for the benefit of Black people, and creating their own spin on it with a very limited understanding.
about what the purpose of something like this is.
Hello, Enola? Hello? 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 Hi, how you doing? I'm good, I'm good. Perfect timing as always. First of all, we want to thank you for coming on to the show. My name is Willie Hamilton, and of course, this is Real Talk. Can you hear me? Yes. So before we get started, could you please do a maybe 1 to 2 minute brief intro of yourself? Um, we're having a technical difficulties. Could you just hold on for just a second? Yeah. Hello? Hello? Okay. Could you say something? Hello? One more time. We do apologize. Could you say something now? I can't hear. One more time. Wow. I don't even hear it in my headphone. Again. Keep on speakerphone. That's why I had it on.
Yeah, just remember the speakers at the
One more time. No. Let me see. I'm gonna try one more time. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Can't hear. I can barely hear. One more time.
Hello.
You barely hear me. Okay. Again, we do apologize for the interruption. For whatever the reason, we're having problems with the connect. Can you say something now?
I'm on the other end of the line here.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
No. Okay. So could you talk more in details about emotional emancipation circles and what is the overall premise behind them?
Well, let me start with the overall premise. Our assumption is that, as Dorothy thought, that as a people across the diaspora, not just in Omaha, not just in Cheshire, Connecticut, where I am, or in Panama, where I was born, that across the African diaspora there is a need, what was pressing need when he was alive, for what he called emancipation from mental slavery, and there still is that need today for what we call emotional emancipation. So the premise of our work is that most of the problems that we face as black people stem from the poisonous notion that we are inferior to white people in almost everybody else on the face of the earth. This happens because in order to justify the enslavement and subjugation of African people, white people created a hierarchy of humanity, with white people at the top and black people at the bottom. And I believe that black people will continue to suffer all manner of mistreatment and unfairness and injustice unless and until we free ourselves of the lies of black superiority and black inferiority, which really are the cause of the devaluing of black lives, the underdevelopment of black communities in Omaha and Connecticut, where I am now, in Panama, in the West Indies, in Africa. Uh, so Community Healing Network's mission is to help black people across the diaspora overcome, heal from, and overturn these lies. Um, our vision is a world in which all black people are healed psychologically, freed of deadly stereotypes, and emotionally empowered to enjoy life in all of its fullness. We want to move from being basically a surviving people to being a flourishing people, and feel that in order to make that happen, and it is our responsibility as black people to make it happen, we've got to free ourselves and our children of these lies once and for all.
And I'm gonna bring Shelley and Mr. Larry Duncan in here to this conversation. So anytime, please jump in. Um, is the circles age specific?
Um, Now, let me jump back and say that in order to build this global movement for emotional emancipation, we have created two flagship programs. One of them is Emotional Emancipation Circles, which we developed in 2009, and the other is Valuing Black Lives, the annual Global Emotional Emancipation Summit, which we launched last year in 2015. And emotional emancipation circles are one of the main strategies that we're using to help drive this global movement for emotional emancipation or freedom from the lies of white superiority and black inferiority. And these are support groups in which we, as black people, come together to understand how history has affected our emotional lives, our relationships, and the well-being of our community, and to learn emotional wellness skills to help us be at our best in terms of, at first, coping with, in a healthier way, the racism that we find wherever we go, but ultimately working to overturn those lies so that we can be free to reach our fullest potential. The emotional emancipation circles are intended for Black people across the age spectrum. They can be age specific in some cases. They can be focused on youth. They can be focused on intergenerational groups. It all depends on the needs of a particular community, a particular neighborhood. So there's a lot of flexibility, but always we're focused on creating a safe space where we respect each other, where we begin to really understand our history beyond dates and places, but also understanding how history affects us emotionally. And doing the work on a sort of macro level, understanding how it's affected our community generally, but also how it's affected our families, how it's affected us personally, and what do we need to do to kind of recognize the things that we've inherited as legacies emotionally that are really wonderful because we have so many strengths as people of African ancestry. But what are the things that are not healthy for us, that are toxic, and that we need to leave behind in order to create a new narrative for ourselves, one that is not based on the lies of white superiority and black inferiority, but rather on the truth of black humanity.
Well, look, let's go back a little bit further. Let's go back to the beginning, if you would. And I know I jumped a little bit ahead. Take us to the beginning of emotional emancipation circle and why.
Okay, and why? Okay, so in his last speech to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, his last presidential address, Martin Luther King Jr. addresses the question, where do we go from here? He's talking in August, I believe, in 1967. And he's going to be assassinated in a few months, and so he doesn't know that, but clearly the movement has been stalling. There's serious issues in the land. There's a question about how vibrant is the civil rights movement, and so he's grappling with this question of where do we go from here. And it's a speech which I commend to you and to all your listeners because it really does, it lists in great detail the things that he thinks we need to do as a people to move forward. But the thing that he says first, and he says this, he says, first, we must massively assert our dignity and worth. We must come to terms with the fact that there is a false sense of inferiority and has been for all of our history here in the Western world as African people, a false sense of inferiority that teaches black children to despise themselves, and a false sense of superiority that teaches white children to adore themselves. He says that unless we deal with this need for psychological freedom, which he calls psychological freedom, what Marcus Garvey called emancipation from mental slavery, any movement that overlooks this necessity of psychological freedom, he says, is only waiting to be buried. Because the Negro will only be free when he reaches down into the inner resources of his own soul and signs with the pen and ink of assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. So that's where the idea, the notion of emotional emancipation circles comes from. It's the unfinished business of the civil rights movement. We think it's the unfinished business of our work of reclaiming our humanity, reclaiming our dignity as African people.
Amen.
So in about, I guess it was about 2008, 2009, we started here in New Haven with this notion of emotional emancipation circles. We brought groups together. We watched movies. We tried to think about how might we have an AA type self-help support group process that could, which would be a black space only, so focused on intraracial healing, that could help us really understand the depth and breadth of what it is that we've been through in terms of trauma, historical and continuing trauma, and how might we begin to heal ourselves. I'm a lawyer by training, and so I felt the limits of my gifts in this regard, and we reached out to the Association of Black Psychologists. It was at that time headed by the incoming president was Dr. Cheryl Grills, who we had a wonderful conversation with her through the good auspices of our board member, Dr. Wisdom Powell, and we had a great conversation asking them to really help us make sure that this emotional emancipation circles idea that we had could be implemented in a way that was psychologically sound and culturally grounded. And we have had a fantastic relationship with the Association of Black Psychologists. They've taken this on and taken on this collaboration with us with incredible vigor and commitment and love for Black people. So that's where it started. We have now about 20. We planted seeds for about 20 emotional emancipation circles in cities of the United States, including Ferguson and Baltimore and Brooklyn and Washington D.C. Here in New Haven as well, and then abroad in Birmingham, England, in the United Kingdom, uh, Havana, Cuba, and we have been invited to work in the Caribbean by the Caribbean Alliance of National Psychological Associations to work in the Caribbean to adapt this model to make sure that it sort of resonates with our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. So we are really very much looking forward to continuing to spread this emotional emancipation circle message and idea and curriculum that's been developed by the Association of Black Psychologists in collaboration with CHN.
Great. Now, when you talk about psychological effect, you have a lot of folks saying, how can this have a psychological effect on black folks that took place 400 years ago? Could
Mm-hmm.
you talk about that? eh,
Sure. Sure, I'll talk about it in this way. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm fairly comfortable about this in terms of the you know what I've learned from the psychologist. But it's actually not it's not a crazy notion. So we have this idea of racism, right? It's a very abstract concept, and we spent a lot of time over the last several hundred years coping with this question, right? So we know that racism is a construct that's created in order for one group to oppress another. In the case of anti-black racism, there were good economic reasons for creating this fiction, these lies. Um, White people wanted to be able to um, use, avail themselves of the labor of black people. They wanted to enslave them. There was this issue, and I know you've done some work with Joy DeGrew's work around, if you've got a Declaration of Independence that declares that all men are created equal, and if you also are Christian and you have this notion that all men and women are made in the image of God, you've got to resolve that cognitive dissonance. You got to face, you can't. It's hard to enslave other human beings. So the easy way to deal with that cognitive dissonance is to say, okay, well, these people aren't human beings. Right? And so when you create these lies, you say that white people are superior to black people. You create this hierarchy of humanity with white people at the top and black people at the bottom, and you really sometimes even consider them less than human outside of the circle of humanity. That resolves the dissonance. You're not enslaving other people. You are enslaving people who are less than human. So these lies dehumanize black people. And so that happens, right? Starting in the late 1600s and goes through 1865. And so you might say to me then, Enola, what happens in 1865? Enslavement ends, the 13th Amendment is passed, so our problems are solved, right? But the problem is that the lies, they continue. The lies which supported the enslavement of black people continue. No one says, well, we now have to get rid of those lies. Now we need to erase those from our memory banks. They continue to apply. So along with the exception in the 13th Amendment, which frees the enslaved people, which says that the exception is that except for if those people are imprisoned. So we know immediately from the work of Michelle Alexander that how black people begin to be re-enslaved. They're re-enslaved through that exception. So you get loitering laws. You get all these laws that are targeted specifically to black people and to their re-enslavement and their continued oppression. All along, the lies of white superiority and black inferiority continue to work. Jim Crow comes into play. Well, that's a perfect example of a lie working, right? In the Dred Scott decision, which um, basically says that black people are an inferior being and they have no rights, which the white man must take into account, needs to take into account. So again, the lies continue to have incredible power. Now, when we started this work back in 2006, people thought we were kind of crazy. They said exactly what you said. What are you talking about? Enslavement ended a long time ago. Don't you worry. When in 2008, we looked even more silly because here we had the election of the first black president. Well, clearly we don't have a problem. Now, 2016, a lot of people see that we have a problem.
Right.
The lies are still operating. They're invisible. They operate with incredible force to reinforce the notion that black people, wherever they are, whether they be at the White House, they be in the halls of Congress, whether they be on the streets of Ferguson or Brooklyn, are, in fact, viewed as less than human. They are people whose lives matter far less than the lives of white people. Now, we see that repeatedly now. And so our argument when we first started, people thought we were crazy. They thought we were crazier in 2008. People think we're making a lot of sense in 2016.
Perfect. Now, Larry and Shelley, y'all can jump in at any time because I'm telling you, a whole lot of questions open up.
So, just before you came on, Enola, I was just talking about how, I came to know about the Community Healing Network and how I came to
I'm
know
sorry.
you.
I can't hear the person who's speaking. I apologize.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
Okay. Before you came on, I was talking about how I came to know the Community Healing Network, and subsequently I met you. I was talking about how we intended to consider ways to partner together and that we gathered on this past Saturday with that intent. I was also talking about how the media ended up coming to be engaged with us on Saturday and how they issued an article and a video of our efforts focused really on what they called African American self-esteem issues. So I wondered if you could help us to clarify some of what I feel is problematic about how KMTV portrayed our efforts on Saturday.
I know this is Shelley talking to me, and I've gotten just bits and snatches of what you said. If you could kind of just say again what the question is, because it's really hard to decipher.
She's basically talking about our efforts that took place at Big Mama's when the media basically took our dialogue and said it was self-esteem issues. And she was saying, could you please elaborate on what was the overall intent of what we were trying to do and the problematic with media?
Right. Well, I thought it was wonderful what you did. We were very grateful. We've been talking for a while about the possibility and the desire on both our parts to have emotional emancipation circles there, have a training, and have them as part of the resources that you offer to the community. And so I was really very happy about that. And it was stunning to me this morning to have my assistant send to me, our community organizer send to me the article that had made it all the way to Gossip Magazine about the conversation that you had that the article said was focused on self-esteem. So I thought, well, gee, yeah, self-esteem is part of this, but self-esteem is by no means the be-all and end-all and the end of what we're trying to do. As I said before, we have a much more, I might say, radical agenda which is to, one, identify the source of the problem. The source of the problem is not inside us, it's in the society, right? It's not just in the United States, but it's all over the globe. The notion that black people are inferior to white people is a worldwide problem, and it's a worldwide problem for us. We are not interested just in improving our self-esteem. The reason why we have these problems of internalized racism, which undermines our health and our well-being, and also implicit biases that are held by people across the globe that encourage people to, the policeman who sees, in the case of Akai Gurley in Brooklyn, New York in 2014, he sees a black man and his immediate instinct is to shoot. The reason that is true is because these lies have infected all of our minds, and there is a kind of association between black people and danger. Black people and, oh my gosh, I'm going to be hurt. Black people and animal. Black people and inferior. Black people and not smart. And black people and not beautiful. Right? All of these things. These are associations that are held by people across the globe. That is systemic. So maybe part of the problem is self-esteem, but that's not the whole of it. And that internalize the problem instead of externalizing it. It's got to be viewed as a systemic problem. When we talk about structural racism, what we're talking about here. These lies are the foundation of it. They're the invisible foundations, and unless we deal with them, we're going to have this problem into the next century. And so, what's interesting about the people who came to cover the event, they didn't get it. They simply didn't get it. I mean, it's my understanding that the word self-esteem were never used by people who were presenting, but whoever was looking at the thing had to find some way to make it understandable to themselves. There's a tendency to want to demean the things that we're doing, and to put them in boxes that can be contained, right? What we're talking about is something quite a bit more radical than just, making sure that people feel good about themselves. Feeling good about yourself is absolutely essential to being able to do well in the world, to make your way in the world, etc. But that's not the limit of what we're trying to do. We want to feel good about ourselves, but we want our children to feel good about themselves because they understand that for 400, 500 years, there has been a system devoted to making black people feel bad about themselves. And we're interested in that system, not just, feeling good against, every day against a system that continues to exist. So we set a deadline of like 2019. Our goal is to engage a critical mass of black people in this movement by the year 2019, which may seem a little crazy, but our view is, you have to set, we believe with Zora Neale Hurston, her mother said, she used to say, Mama exhorted us to jump at the sun. We might not get there, but at least we get off the ground. And so our ambition is very, very, we're very ambitious in terms of what we're trying to do. And also we don't like the notion that, every time we celebrate an anniversary of something having to do with the black community, there's always the statement that we've come a long way and we've got a long way to go, as though our quest, our struggle should be perpetual. We don't think that it should be. I mentioned earlier we're trying to move beyond surviving people to flourishing people, and we want to do that by a date certain. We don't want to just be dragging this on. I don't want my grandchildren to have to deal with this. And so it falls to us to figure out how to get these lies out of our heads and how to get it out of the world. So we have to be very careful, I think, when we deal with the media. We know problems with the media generally, and problems with the media, particularly when it relates to black communities. It's I don't know why it's done. We could come up with a lot of reasons why, but the bottom line is that they're not going to take the care to really understand what we're trying to do. And my view is that we have so many more important things to do that, in large part, we prefer not to deal with the media, because in most cases, there's going to be a mischaracterization or a carelessness about how the thing is reported, and that we certainly saw that in the case of not Bossip, because Bossip just carried the story that was done locally. Um, so, as we discussed earlier, I think it's just very important to be mindful that the work that really needs to be done is work within our community, outside of the gaze of the media. We do not let media into emotional emancipation circles because the work that needs to be done, in our view, is sacred work. Um, and so I think we can always expect that if we talk to the media, there's going to be you know, something that we have to then explain later on. And we would just prefer to use our energies in other ways.
For me, I really think it sets the tone for emotional emancipation circles. That's why that space cannot have any folks other than black folks only, because this is what happens. And
Hmm.
so I want you to talk about the importance of having that space and why is it so necessary for us to have the foundation and the training behind the emotional emancipation circles to be able to conduct those.
Hmm. Well, I think the training is really very important, and and we entrust that to the um, leaders of the Association of Black Psychologists, who, as I said, have approached this work with such incredible commitment and dedication. I mean, the sweat equity that's gone into this, the pro bono hours that have gone into this are just countless. And the love that has gone into this is it's really wonderful. So we trust the process that they've developed. Not that it's a perfect process, because we think that it's growing. It's constantly evolving, and we're figuring out, what adaptations need to be done in order to make this live and breathe for young people. How does it resonate with them? How does it resonate in an intergenerational kind of conversation? Because we know there's healing to be done between our older people and our younger people, because we can't move forward without that healing. So we're constantly responsive. It's a kind of a call and response. So we issue a call, and the people who are participating in the training and who are participating in the EECs, as we call them, it tell us, talk back to us and say, well, we need it to be tweaked in this way in order for it to work for us, in order for it to resonate with us, in order for us to want to come back. And we're just really truly open to that. Um, Tell me what else you wanted me to tell you.
Um, let's talk about some of the barriers that you guys actually went through with trying to establish these circles in the different cities, so that we can try to navigate those.
Hmm.
Could you talk about some of the barriers that you guys had to face
But
when trying to establish some of those
yeah,
circles?
and we're constantly facing barriers, right? And we're constantly figuring out how to solve them. In some cases, we have people who meet monthly. In some cases, we have people who meet weekly, and so people, decide for themselves what they're going to do in terms of frequency of meetings. Our original idea was, this would be like AA, and we may still do that down the road, where you'd have a couple of spaces in every community, and you'd have a choice of, meetings that you would go to. So that's the sort of long-term design. I think some of the other challenges that we face is that sometimes the stuff that people have to talk about is painful. And we find that sometimes people want to put that off or want to avoid it. Um, and so our point there is to encourage people to keep coming, partly because the EECs are not just, dealing with heavy duty emotional issues, but it's also a lot of fun. The psychologists have been, I think, very wise in adding a lot of opportunities for learning, as well as opportunities for fun. So there's, spoken word in some spaces. There's always music at the beginning, the middle, and the end. There's always dancing, because we think that we are doing something that should be celebrated, that we are really completing the journey that our ancestors begun for us, and that this movement is a movement that's being completed not just for our children, but also for our ancestors. They are waiting for us to do this so that they can be truly at peace. We believe that. So when we think about challenges, we welcome them, right? It's the opportunity for us to learn and work together to solve the challenges. Um, for us, staying in the circle is very, very important because it's a radical act. It's a radical act that says that that recognizes that at the heart of our enslavement was our separation. And so by coming together and purposing to stay together, whatever the challenges may be, we are doing something that the people who designed the system within which we're in, the matrix that we're in, they do not want us to do. So that as long as we stay together, we are accomplishing the radical objective.
Okay, I guess the bigger question for me will be, how would these type of circles have an impact on the mental health of black folks?
Well, we're I wish Dr. Grills was on the phone with us right now, but we just finished an article called Breathe, Baby, Breathe. And one of the things that is really common in what we've heard from people is that in these spaces we just get to relax. We just get to be. We don't have to be about impressing anybody. We can be really honest about our shared feelings. We can recognize that we have an awful lot in common wherever we may be on the socioeconomic spectrum or demographically or geographically, that we're dealing with stuff from which we need relief. So that's the first thing, is that people can find that in EECs, I don't know if you know when you take a deep breath, your shoulders tend to come down
Yeah.
because you're just relaxing everything. People say that a lot. And for us, that's really important because we know that the stresses, the racial stress that people experience has, very negative impact on our health, not just emotional, but also physical. So it reduces our stress level. Um, it also helps us to understand our situation. Um, when you have to think about history and how it might have affected your mother or your father, and therefore how it affected their parenting of you. We've had people. One of our emotional emancipation circles was very powerful. A young lady talked about how going through the circle helped her to forgive her grandmother because it helped her to understand the forces that were impinging on her grandmother and her grandmother's treatment of her, which was not good. But it helped her to understand and forgive. And we know that forgiveness is very important on the road to healing.
Absolutely.
So, you get that kind of thing, and you get people who begin to understand, you know, that they don't haven't liked themselves as much as they should. And then how do you develop a plan, and how do you have a support of other people in your group in this safe space to help you be conscious and intentional about loving yourself? So there's so many different things that we need to deal with. It's the personal things, personal feelings about ourselves, how we look, how smart we think we are, how confident we are in spaces. One of the things that we do, which is so interesting, is develop responses to microaggressions. So the group develops responses to these sort of hypothetical. They're not so hypothetical because they're happening all the time. So you bring in a microaggression, and then you figure out, okay, what is the empowering way that we're going to deal with this thing the next time it happens? And the group does it together. And so the microaggression has less of an effect on you because you have a tool to respond to it. right? And that tool has been developed with the other people in the group. And I'm sure there are other things that are going on in groups that that I don't know about because the group itself is the source of the new ideas, the new strategies, the new tools. I think you may have seen one of the videos that we did in which a a wonderful sister in Baltimore says, we realize that we are each other's medicine,
Yes.
that we are the source of the healing. And again, the psychologists are very, very clear that, one kid can, do journaling individually and all kinds of things individually, but part of our healing as African people is coming back to each other, coming back to the circle, coming back to the notion of I am because we are versus I think therefore I am. I think therefore I am is a very lonely person. It's a very singular, it's a radical individualistic person. And we as African people are, we're interested in the community. We're interested in each other, and that's where our healing is going to come from.
Uh, could you give folks your website or Facebook page for folks to learn more about
Absolutely.
emotional emancipation circles?
It's communityhealingnet.org, communityhealingnet.org. And you go there, there's an emotional emancipation circle section. There's some videos that you can see. Um, and you can always contact us at eecircles at communityhealingnet.org if you want to learn more, if you're interested in doing trainings. We're going to be doing regional training um, starting in the summer here. We'll be releasing that schedule very soon. And there'll be opportunities for people who, in some cases, people will want to bring our team to the local area. In other cases, people will say, okay, well, I'm gonna take a team of people to this place to be trained. And we want to be very rigorous about the training because it's the reason that, I as a lawyer went to the psychologist because this is, again, sacred work. It needs to be done in a way that is respectful of that. Uh, the people who are trained need to know how to do trainings. We're less interested in training people who are just new to training, right?
Right.
Because we want to know that the people that we have the basic skills, but also have the right disposition. Is this person committed to his or her own healing? And so we have a very getting longer questionnaire about the people who we would train. And is this person committed to um, his or her own healing? Is this person committed to making sure that the spaces are healthy spaces and ensuring that happens and figuring out how to reach out to other members of the EEC community to ask for help, to ask for support. Once we do the in-person training, which we think is absolutely important, that begins with an experience of the EEC. Before we start talking about how it's done, we have the trainers and facilitators actually come into a circle and go through a circle because we find that experience is incredibly powerful. So we're very interested in making sure that there is um, assessment of the right person to be a trainer, uh, a good training experience, develop webinars for continuing support and um, growth and learning and development. And we do ask for a serious commitment. If we train people, we really want to know that they will be committed to doing what needs to be done, dealing with the challenges, consulting with us about how to overcome them, to continue to provide this service to the people in their community. Our goal is to train at least 2019 facilitators trainers by the year 2019, which will be the 400th anniversary of the forced arrival of Africans at Virginia Colony, because we just like to say because 400 years is enough. We really we really want to focus our community on that 2019 date because we need to adopt an attitude that says by that date, we want to be on the road to healing in a very intentional and aggressive way.
And I guess that was leading to my next my next question is, they always talk about measurable outcomes. What
Yes.
is emancipation, emotional emancipation circles measurable outcome? What did it hope to accomplish?
Well, yeah, we're in the process right now. We trained more than 50 people in February in the state of California, northern and southern California. 50 agency leaders who are then going to be creating emotional emancipation circles in the north and the south of California. They are going to be really helping us to develop sort of the evaluation tools. So far, our evaluation has been, people really want this. People come. People are participating. They're reporting anecdotally that their attitude has changed, right? But we know that in this world that we live in, evidence-based stuff is really important. Although we want to question evidence-based requirements because we want, we know, and the psychologists tell us that they don't always, those measures don't always work for us. We want to develop our own measures.
Absolutely.
But so we're doing that. We're trying to make sure that the effort that we make is moving in the right direction. But Potter Stewart, the late Supreme Court Justice, said this about pornography. He said, I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it. And for
That's a good point.
us, for us, it's emotional emancipation is, you know it when you see it, and it's a journey, right? Because it takes a long time to develop the discipline of loving oneself, and for Black people, loving oneself has to be a discipline. But you can see it. People may act in a different way. One guy told me, he said, one of the things I do very differently is I am more confident about challenging microaggressions. I'm just more confident about it, and I'm more willing to do it. I might have in the past, or no, in the past for sure, I would just internalize it, go home and stew about it. But now I can recognize it, and I can actually talk to people about it and educate them about the fact that you've just done something that is quite unconscious. It's part of your conditioning, but it hurt me, and I don't want you to do it again. That's, for me, that's huge, right?
Yes.
Because that is empowerment. It's emotional empowerment. One of the measures will be, how many people really adopt, incorporate on a regular basis mindfulness um, in their lives, because we think that mindfulness is important around just how do you um, how do you take time to be aware of yourself and aware of your emotions, right? Um, the American Psychiatric Association says that racism adversely affects the victim's um, self-image, confidence, and optimal mental functioning, which means that we are operating at less than maximum capacity by virtue of the fact that we're victims of racism, right? And so mindfulness helps us to understand that. It helps us to take in all the new information that we're getting about our history and connect it with our emotions and develop more responsiveness versus reactiveness, right? So if you step on my toe, I might react very quickly. I might do something that's not in my best interest. And so the mindfulness helps us to really understand this sort of pressure cooker that we're in, and instead of reacting in ways that might hurt us, we react in ways that might lower our blood pressure, right? If you have a skill of meditation or stress reduction, which we want to teach in our EECs, say, hey, you know what? This is this is an opportunity for my blood pressure to really rise. I'm going to systematically, intentionally work to lower it. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to do some deep breathing. That's extremely helpful, and that's measurable.
Absolutely. I think Brother Larry want to ask a question real quick.
Okay, my question is about the structure of the circles, maybe a
I'm
little bit
sorry, I
about the
cannot hear.
environment or the nature of the circles.
He be right here.
Hello?
Yes, we still here. Yes, Brother Larry.
Hi, Nola. My question is about
Hi.
the curriculum. Maybe talk a
Mhm.
little bit about the nature of the circles, the importance of the environment. I read something about the even with the decor on in the environment, um, and maybe some of the elements. Uh, Maybe a little bit
Mhm.
about how the spiritual, historical, spiritual aspects fit into making up um,
Mhm.
the EEC.
Well, again, it's something to be experienced, and the I thank you for the question. The elements are very important to us. So the
Are you
space
there?
that we try to create. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Sh- Should I keep going?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Hello.
Anola, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry. Um, so as people enter the room, we want it to be a space that is uplifting. So our colors, our color is sky blue. Um, I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2010. Dr. Maya Angelou, who is the founding member of our board of advisors, issued for us a call to wear sky blue. And the reason that our color is sky blue is that we are building a movement, again, from surviving to thriving to flourishing. So we're moving beyond the pain of the blues to the sky blue of unlimited possibilities. So you will see a lot of sky blue around EEC, around this movement that Community Healing Network is driving. So when people come into the room, there will be music that is uplifting and challenging and inspiring. There will be water. There will be, sort of sky blue tablecloths. There will be quotes, which we provide on our website, quotes that you can print out and put around the wall. And these quotes are very important to us because as people walk into the room, they have an opportunity through these quotes to be in communication with our ancestors, people like Garvey and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Frantz Fanon, who have been telling us and calling us to do this work for many, many, many decades. And so they're reminders to us that this work must be done. And they're also inspirations to us that the work can be done. One of our favorites is, Garvey's "We have a beautiful history, and in the future we shall create another that will astonish the world." That's what we're there to do in the EECs, to reclaim our dignity and our humanity as African people and absolutely astonish the world by the things that we will then do. And we know that we can do this because even with the weight of these lies on our shoulders, we've done amazing things. It's amazing what we do, how we get up in the morning and deal with this stuff that we deal with. So we're amazing people, and we come from the people who made a way out of no way. So we know that once we get rid of these burdens, there is no limit. There will be no limit to what we and our children can do. And so that spirit, that feeling, we want to convey in the space with the music, with the lighting, with um, serving healthy food, having those quotes around the table, having a PowerPoint that really helps people to understand our history, that this has been, in fact, an unbroken oppression because of the continuing power of the lies, and that if we want to be free, we got to get free of those lies. Otherwise, we'll be here another 50 years wondering, as our first African American First Lady wondered in May of 2014. You know, isn't it interesting that it's been 50 years and things in terms of segregation in our schools is just they're just as bad as when Dr. King gave his last speech. Well, unless if we don't want to have to hear that kind of thing 50 years from now, this work has to be done. There's no more important thing that needs to be done. It's a necessary. A lot of things are that we need to do are necessary, but they're not sufficient. This is absolutely necessary, and it will be sufficient because once we do this work, it'll make everything else easier. When we wonder why it's so hard for Black people to work together, we have an EEC. I won't name the city just because I don't want to identify the people, but an EEC where people who are leaders of agencies, Black leaders of agencies who have not been able to work with each other for years are now working with each other because they understand that part of the programming and conditioning, or essentials of the programming and conditioning, to their role as gatekeepers over other Black people means that they're not supposed to work together. And they've decided that they don't want to perform to that script anymore as a result of understanding their history in new ways, as a result of being able to spend some time in mindfulness, spend some time breathing together, spend some time building trust with each other. So that's what happens in this space. Really interesting stuff happens. Sometimes unpleasant things happen, but we know how to deal with them so that people come back. Sometimes they don't, but in most cases they do.
Well, I appreciate that. I have another question for you, and it's about responsiveness. And you talked about not naming cities, but I know that you've done some work in Baltimore City in response to some of the community violence there. Can you talk a little bit about your responsiveness to what's happening in a lot of our cities?
We want to be responsive, and we've managed to be responsive in a lot of places. So Baltimore was a wonderful example. We had been working with a young lady there named Charlene Phipps, and I'll name her because she's like one of our best EEC leaders, and just incredibly dedicated and committed to our work. We've been working with her for a long time. She had been promoting for like 4 or 5 years our Community Healing Days, the celebration, which is on the third weekend of every October. Community Healing Days is kind of like Earth Day as a way of raising awareness, setting aside time to put time for healing on the Black community's agenda so that we could, just start talking about, why do we need to heal? We would have those conversations on that weekend. So she was working with us on that and a number of other things. And in April, when the uprising occurred, I was scheduled along with members of the Association of Black Psychologists to be in Baltimore on another matter. And it was really important to me that if we were going to be in Baltimore, we needed to reach out to the community and offer a space for beginning a conversation about healing. And tell you, we reached out to Charlene, and she was within 36 hours. She had put everything in place to make this happen. Since then, I think there are maybe 2 or 3 emotional emancipation circles that have launched from that. We're working with the Baltimore Mental Health Alliance to help promote additional EECs in specific zip codes, and that's a place that we're really very excited about, looking forward to doing more work. All challenging, but we're doing our best to support. We're somewhat hampered by lack of resources. We're very small, currently very small volunteer organization. We've got a board, and I kind of serve as the volunteer executive director. And we've got a part-time person who does the community organizing and does a phenomenal job at it. That's Courtney Crossland. And so we've done a lot as a bare bones volunteer organization. We're now moving in the direction of becoming a more professionally staffed organization. So just like what we're going to do when we really free ourselves of these emotional burdens, once we get that staffing, we'll be able to do even more amazing stuff than we've already done.
What has been your relationship with the churches? Have you found a way for them to be involved? You found any barriers with that? What has worked with working with local churches?
Well, it's interesting. Community Healing Network really was born in the church. It was launched at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in New Haven, Connecticut, which is the third oldest African American Episcopal church in the United States. So it is rooted there, grounded there, although it's now a secular organization. We very much want to work in collaboration with faith communities, not just Christian churches.
Right.
And it's a challenge, and it's one of those things where, in order to do it well, we've got to have someone who's really dedicated to that. But where we have the opportunity, in some communities, people are based in churches. In others, they're using community-based organizations, spaces, etc. But and sometimes, and I'm thinking of an initial experience we had. Sometimes the messages get kind of fuzzy. And one of the things that's very clear for us is that emotional emancipation circles have to be spaces that bring us together and don't tear us apart.
Right.
And so where we have a kind of a ground rule and understanding and agreement that emotional emancipation circles are for this work only, not for political work, not for proselytizing, not for promoting a religion. And in some cases, it does get fuzzy, and when it gets fuzzy, we have to clear it up.
That makes sense. That's real clear. We have one final question about the timeline. I'm not sure exactly what that is, so Willie's going to come back and ask you this one final question about the timeline.
Okay.
Yes. If a city wanted to bring the training to their city, what would be the timeline to be able to do that?
Oh, we're flexible. We'll work with you. I mean, based on, we'd originally talked about a date. That still may be possible. I think that in some cases there's an urgency, and we will try to put a team together to move in. We call them emotional emancipation rapid response teams. If there's an urgent matter, we will try to get there as quickly as we can. And so the question, I mean, there's no kind of hard and fast rule about it. That's a kind of that's a negotiation. We'll talk and figure out what is your need, how quickly can we get there, what would the arrangements be, and we do this work because we're compelled to do it, and we will find a way.
Okay. Could you do me a favor and summarize this conversation tonight, and then maybe something that we did not touch on that you may want to mention? You got the last word.
Well, okay. We are. Let me just start with one of my favorite quotes. James Baldwin said that people are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them. To which I'd like to say, we are escaping. Come with us. That's what this movement is about. For 400 years, we have been living our lives here in the United States and in the diaspora outside of the United States for almost 500 years, living our lives according to a narrative that was written for us by other people to serve their interests. What we're saying in this movement is we need a new narrative, and we need to write that narrative ourselves. Narrative the 400-year-old narrative is based on the lie of white superiority and the lie of black inferiority. At Community Healing Network, we're saying we no longer wish to perform to that narrative. We will no longer perform to that narrative. We need to write a new narrative that's based on the truth of black humanity. And it's going to take a while because we've been performing to the narrative, the other narrative, for such a long time. So the idea of emotional emancipation circles is to begin to understand that old narrative and to figure out how we extricate ourselves from it and then write the new narrative. And the Value in Black Lives Global Summit is about how do we understand how this narrative works across the globe in every system. And this is big. This is big work. We recognize it. Again, though, we're with Zora Neale Hurston's mother. Jump at the sun. At least you'll get off the ground. We want to be very ambitious and say this, that we wish to dismantle the structural racism that's founded on these lies. So we need to understand how the lies operate, and we need to figure out a way to reverse engineer it and destroy it. So those are the things that we're doing. We are recognizing that we're trapped in history and recognizing that we have the ability, because we are the descendants of the people who made a way out of no way, to get ourselves out of this so that our children and we can truly live our lives at our fullest potential and move from surviving people, blues people, to flourishing people, sky blue people.
Wow. Drop the mic. drop, drop, drop the mic. I just want to say,
I like that saying. I started saying that. I said that to my kids the other day. They said, "Mommy, you know about that?" I said, "Yeah, I know about that."
well, anyway, you just dropped the mic because you really just put hit the nail on the head, and I can't thank you enough. This show will be archived. We will be putting our message out in response to what took place Saturday.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And we
And
also
I can't thank you enough.
no, thank you. I have learned so much. I know you would get goosebumps, but I didn't get goosebumps listening to this show and really setting the stage for why black folks only meeting and why we need to have emotional emancipation circle. This is intentional for a reason. It truly is a game changer. So again, I want to thank you, and we will be in touch soon to see what is
Looking forward.
needed to actually make this a reality by actually
We'll do it.
bringing this here and really start the healing process within our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Again, drop the mic. You've been tuned in to 1690 AM The One. My name is Willie Hamilton. I'm here with Miss Ellie Henderson, Mr. Larry Duncan, and Miss Enola. She just really dropped the mic, folks. Please go back, check the archive. If you have any questions, you can contact either one of us. Again, as always, we leave you with peace.
What did she say at the end?
I don't know, it's basically everything that I was.
What'd she say?
I just wasn't saying it all politically correct.
What did she say? What did she say?
Did you stop broadcast?
You have to listen to the archive.
Thank you very much. It's too long to do.